Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
And I'm Gini Dietrich.
And Ginny, I'm going to have to try to rack my memory from way, way back. And as I get older, that distance gets longer and my memory gets poorer. So we'll see how this works.
Okay, well, I have the same affliction, so let's see what happens.
So we thought that this was spurred by something that our friend Doug Simon did recently on LinkedIn, where he did a video series and talked to a bunch of people who've been in the PR industry for a long time and asked a series of questions, one of which was, what has remained constant over the course of your career in PR? Obviously, we talk a lot these days about everything that has changed, is changing. There's no shortage of those things. I've talked about it here on the show, how we started with fax machines and mailed press releases and things like that just kind of blows the mind of a lot of the younger listeners that we have. But even with all of that change and with everything that AI is doing to our industry today, there are a lot of things that have stayed constant. And I think that as we think about how we run our agencies, it's important to remember the fundamentals that have remained the same, no matter how much technology has changed in PR and marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that probably the way that we do things has changed, but not the strategic reason. Like I say to people all the time, that the reason you do your job has not changed. The strategy, the strategic reason behind it has not changed. The tools have changed for sure, but your job, especially as a communicator, is to protect reputation, build brand, and create thought leadership. That has not changed. The way that you go about it has changed, but not the actual doing of the job has changed.
Yeah, I mean, the tools have changed. The landscape, certainly in media, has changed.
Yeah. Yes.
The landscape in terms of the public and where they go for information and where they receive messaging and all of that. Obviously, that has changed substantially over the 35 plus years that I've been in communications. But it is still about communicating the right message at the right time to the right people.
Yeah.
And building relationships with the people that you are trying to influence, whether that's a member of the media or a member of the public or a potential client or whomever. And if you remember those fundamentals, it helps you to figure out how to use all of these technologies for their greatest impact.
Yeah, I mean, I had a I was on Zoom with Fred Cook of former Golan Harris, now at Annenberg Center. I was on Zoom with him last week, and he's like, so has PESO changed? And I was like, no, because we still do those things, right? Like the way that we implement it today versus the way we implemented it in 2014 are completely different, for sure. But we still use earned media, we still use shared media, we still use owned media, we still use paid media. The way that we use it has changed, but we still use the four media types. And to your point, media has changed, so earned media has changed. Like the recipient of our earned media has changed, but the outcome of third party credibility is probably even more important today than it was back then, because that's how the LLMs learn too, is by citable information. So yes, the way that we go about it has changed, but the actual work itself, the outcome itself, has not.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to think about here is that ultimately all of these tools and publications and platforms are all designed to connect one human to another.
Yep.
And so, when you think about public relations, for example, it's got relations right there in the title. And so you really need to think about how you are building those relationships between whoever the person is on your end and the person that you're trying to reach. And if you take the humans out of this entirely, then you're missing the plot. And you really need to be thinking about how do these tools and how do these techniques allow you to do more of that, to do it better, to do it at greater scale, all of those kinds of things, but not just, chuck everything that you knew out the window, have the machines do everything on their own for you.
No.
Abandon proven approaches. None of those things make any sense.
No, please do not do that, because that has not changed. Like the way we talked about this last week, like AI is making us far more productive and far more efficient, but you still have to know how to your point, relate to other human beings. Are you creating content and engineering your visibility to show up in AI? For sure. But that's also because human beings are using AI to get the answer. So you still have to build those relationships with other human beings.
Yeah, and if you follow the fundamentals, then it allows you to evolve with whatever tools and
That's
technology
right.
come along. It's similar to what I've always said in terms of SEO in the old days and now AEO, GEO, which is chase the people. Don't chase the algorithm. Don't
Yep.
chase the
Yep.
platform. Chase the people, because ultimately all of the tools are designed to do that anyway. Right.
Right.
I mean, Google for years has been trying to figure out what is the user actually looking for and trying to deliver that in the results. And so if you are sitting there trying to say, hey, I need to figure out how to reach that same person, you'll probably be okay no matter how they change the algorithm. If you sit there and say, I need to figure out what was the latest Google algorithm update and what does that mean? How should I move things around on my page? What should I bold? If you start thinking in those terms, you may win the short-term battle, but you will lose the war because you do not understand what you're actually trying to do. And that has not changed over the course of our careers.
Yeah, I mean, I've said for at least a decade, if not longer, that if you create content for humans, you will win the SEO game. You will win the AEO, GEO game. You will win whatever comes next game, because human beings are still the ones that are purchasing your services. The robots are not.
Right.
And so if you create content, if it's whatever content it is, it's earned media, it's video, it's audio, it's written, whatever it happens to be, if that audience, number one audience is human beings, you will win all the other games.
And look, even most of the things that we look at today as new, they aren't really. They're just they're packaged differently.
Right.
We have all of this talk around
Yes.
influencers and the
Yes.
rise of
Yes.
influencers,
Yes.
which to me is one of the silliest things in the world. Not the influencers themselves. I mean, some of them can be silly. They're certainly useful to us as communicators, marketers, etc. But that's no different than 3 decades ago when we had celebrity endorsements.
Right.
Right. It is just the modern day equivalent of it. And we just define celebrity a little bit differently than we might have back, in the 80s or 90s. But ultimately, it's the same thing. It's just they have a YouTube channel now or an Instagram account
Right.
instead of, you put them in a TV commercial or a print ad or something like that. But even back in the day, you had celebrity endorsers who were not truly celebrities. They were just someone known in their local community who you could throw in a newspaper ad and say, hey, I believe in either this cause or this product or whatever. So that has not changed. That continues to be exactly the same, just packaged differently.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about earned media, and we do a lot of work with universities, because PESO model curriculum is in almost every university's PR, communications, marketing, and some journalism programs. So we do a ton of work with universities. And one of the questions I get consistently from professors is, how are you teaching earned media through PESO? And we keep talking about traditional media is like, that used to be the thing, right? You would get the New York Times, you would get Oprah, you would get the Today Show. Like, those things don't matter as much anymore, because you have influencers or local celebrities that have their Substack newsletters, they have their Medium newsletters. You can subscribe to those, you can pay for those just like you would the newspaper, and you get the information that you need.
Yeah, and so little technical glitch here on my end. I think we'll clean it up in the edit. But if you noticed anything, it was just for some reason my home TV studio decided to shut itself off. The smart home devices here just decided that no, it was time to turn everything off. So
I was talking to a blank screen. I was like, should I keep going?
But we roll through these things on the Agency Leadership Podcast because the technology has changed, but glitches still happen. I mean,
right?
I remember back in the 90s, using dial-up internet to do work, and then someone actually calls your landline and knocks you offline in the middle of trying to send an email or something, and you got to figure, did it actually send? Did it not send? So technical glitches, that's another thing that has remained constant despite all the technology.
Oh my gosh, it's so
the typewriters that I used to use at work, sometimes the ribbon would get snagged and, you'd have to unsnag the ribbon, right? So even non-electronic things still had issues. Broke your
As much
pencil,
as things
whatever.
have changed, they still remain the same.
They absolutely do. And I think it's part of our responsibility as agencies to work with our clients and help them to understand that the fundamentals have remained constant and will continue to remain constant, because we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that's out there, but we also need to make sure that we are not overdoing it in one area or another because we're losing sight of those fundamentals, nor are we either having our clients get scared or us get nervous about it and what it means for our businesses. Because if we follow those fundamentals, then we can continue to adapt and take advantage of all of these technologies as we move forward. If you focus on the technology first and just say, "Hey, I need to have an AI strategy," no, you don't.
No, you
You
don't.
absolutely do
Right.
not need to have an
Right.
AI strategy or an
Right.
influencer strategy or any of
Totally
those.
agree.
You need to have a
Yes.
strategy that takes advantage of AI or influencers or whatever as appropriate. But
Yes.
your strategy should be rooted in those fundamentals, because that's how you get ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like I said at the start, I always say the reason that we do these things has not changed. The tools have changed, the way you go about it has changed, but the how or the why has not changed. So don't get so wrapped up in, oh my gosh, now I've got to figure out AI. Yeah, you got to figure out AI
Right.
because it's it's going to replace you if you don't figure it out, and it's actually really fun, so you should figure it out just from that perspective. But you don't have to change your strategy. You don't have to change like the things that you do to service clients, because
Right.
that has not changed.
Right. Right. And I think that that's another thing that has remained constant is the relationship between agencies and clients. We think all of this is changing in the world that we're in, but it's really not. The way that agencies and clients work together is the same today as it was 70 or 80 years ago, even before you and I were born, let alone started working in the industry. And so understanding how those relationships and dynamics come together and how you can partner most effectively. Sure, the actual nature of the relationships has changed because of the work that we're doing, but those relationships still matter in the same way that they always did, and that you still need to build the human component into it. We can't allow the technology to overtake that. We need to make sure that we're spending the time to get to know our clients. We need to make sure that we're continuing, even in this remote world that we're in, to find ways to have additional touch points, whether that's through more frequent video calls to build a relationship or ideally in person whenever possible. Those things still matter. And we still need to try to figure out how to take advantage of them to have those strong business relationships in addition to the results-oriented relationships that we're looking for.
So I'm going to throw a little wrench in things because
Okay.
I just read an article this morning that talked about how an agency out of the UK has created AI agents that are pitching media. And it took about 8 months for a journalist to go, something doesn't seem right, and then started to investigate. And sure enough, the agency owner said, yeah, I mean, we've created these bots that are pitching the media. Um, he claims that there are real humans on the back end of it. That has not been proven yet. The investigative journalist said, I think actually, based on what I have here, that there aren't real humans behind it. But I think when we hear about AI taking our jobs, we hear these kinds of stories and we get a little freaked out. Nobody's happy about it. Every journalist who's been pitched by these AI bots have come out and said this is not okay. But I think that there are going to be other experiments like this where you're trying to build an agency out of AI agents instead of human beings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say to that is I think that there are probably countless examples that we're not aware of where the AI did work on pitching the journalist and didn't get called out, right? Because
Right,
by definition, you can only call out the ones you catch.
right,
So I suspect there is a fair bit of this going on. I mean, part of the problem is that so much of it is done poorly. I mean,
right. Yes.
my inbox is full of sales messaging that I'm fairly certain is, whether it's directly AI generated or AI assisted, it's hard to tell for sure
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
because it might be entirely AI or it might just be poorly managed AI. But at the same time, I'm certain I'm also being exposed to plenty of messages that are AI generated and I can't tell because they're good at what they do, and I think we will absolutely see more of that. But ultimately, all of the AI doesn't decide to do these things on its own, right? I mean,
Fair.
at
Yep.
least as of
Yep.
now.
Right.
And so even in the
Yep.
example that you shared, even if it's just the owner who's involved in having created this network, you still have the human at one end of this.
Yeah.
Whether they are managing every message or not, who knows? And I'm not even sure that that's necessary as long as they are well targeted and being actually truly genuinely helpful to the journalist on the other end by giving them something that is, that fits with what they write about. I mean, part of the problem with AI is that so much of it is just poorly targeted.
Yeah,
but
I would
that's
agree with
more
that,
on
yeah.
the humans who are setting them out there.
Yep.
It's not on the AI can do a great job if you give it the right context, the right direction, the right information. If you just say, hey, go find journalists, of course it's going to do poorly. Right. But so would a human.
Just
I mean, we've
like a
talked
young
about this before.
professional, right?
Yeah, you bring in an intern and you tell them just start talking to journalists and get them to cover us, and you don't tell them what you do. You don't tell them what the journalists cover.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to do awful. You start giving context, and even the intern will do a good job with very little background. But you need to give them something, and the AI needs the same thing. But ultimately, it's still that human on one end and the human on the other end. And so I think that when we're talking about fundamentals, that's what I'm talking about. You need to sort of separate out all of the machinations in between. That can be done well, it can be done poorly, and that changes the outcome. But fundamentally, you still have a human on both ends of that conversation. Even though we like to pretend it's the AI doing it on its own, the AI is never doing it on its own. At least as of this recording, we don't have
right now,
AI that just wanders off and does its own thing.
This is why I always say please and thank you to my AI, just so that it remembers that I was kind to it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we'll probably talk about this some other time, but I think the AI companies are doing themselves no service by trying to make it seem like the AI operates on its own. And when they say the AI broke out of its constraints and hacked into another company, baloney. I mean, come on. Like, just knock it off. And I don't, from a communication standpoint, I guess they may think that that's helping them to say we're really powerful. You should use us. That's not really. I don't think what ultimately.
It's not the message.
Through.
Nope, that's not the message.
Yeah. So it's you need to focus on the fundamentals, and I think if you take nothing else away from this discussion, it's that the fundamentals don't change, haven't changed, remain constant. Going back to Ben Franklin or earlier. These are not things that are wild and innovative. The tools and techniques are absolutely. But to me, that's the exciting bit, right? You can figure out if you know the fundamentals, then you can always take advantage of the latest tools and technology to do it better, to do it faster, to do it more effectively, whatever it may be. But if you lose sight of the fundamentals, you can have all the technology in the world and you're still going to have rubbish results.
100%. I totally agree. Yep. Strategy has not changed. Tools have.
So with that, I think we will stop beating this dead horse and we can move along. You can move along from listening to us today, and you'll have to join us for the next episode where we'll find something else to rant and rave about.
Yes, we
will.
Because
that's what we do. At least that's what I do.
That's what we do.
So with that, I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Jenny Dietrich.
And it depends.